Welcome back to the Infinite Jungle. I have a quick note about the show programming this week. There was no ACD call because developers are taking a bit of a break from the calls. They are meeting in person in Kenya for an interop event. So for the Infinite Jungle shows this week, we will only have one. And the one episode that I am very excited to be recording today is being recorded with a special guest, Uri Klarman from bloXroute. He's the co-founder and CEO of bloXroute. Very excited to be getting into the discussion around the latest DOJ charges against two brothers that had MEV'd some MEV bots. So we're going to get into that. But as a quick disclaimer note for the show today, we are not really going to be talking about what is MEV, the basics around MEV, and explaining a lot of the technical terms. So if you are interested in learning more about the basics, please do refer to the two Galaxy research reports that I've written about going on over the fundamentals of MEV, which we will link in the show notes. So with that,
these are two great. I read them. They're good.
Yes, that's Uri. Well, thanks for being on the show, Uri.
Thank you for inviting me. This is fun.
I'm very excited to get into conversation with you. But before we start with the show, here is a quick show disclaimer. I need to remind you to please refer to the disclaimer linked in the podcast show notes and note that none of the information in this podcast constitutes investment advice, an offer, recommendation, or solicitation by Galaxy Digital or any of its affiliates to buy or sell any securities. Back to the show. Uri, oh my goodness, it's been a while since I talked to you last. I love the background for the video folks, background that you have. I'm going to just assume that was put up there for the Infinite Jungle theme.
Of course it was.
You've got Africa there.
That's not because I want my 5-year-old girl to learn geography. It's literally for the jungle.
I believe it. Well, thank you for the extra effort that you are putting into the show. We are going to get into a pretty controversial and I would say very timely topic because very recently the DOJ released an indictment, a sealed indictment. They unsealed it because they are charging these two brothers that were involved in a hack on the MEV-Boost protocol last year, April 2023. Galaxy Research actually did write about this hack, so I'll link to that in the show notes as well. But maybe just to give the lay of the land first, Uri, do you want to give a quick rundown of kind of the charges, I guess, against the two brothers?
I think it has two pieces. One of them I don't know much about. One of them is like money laundering. Okay, they took it this way and etc. And I don't know if they're guilty or not. That's like out of my expertise. But like I care less about like, oh, they made money in MEV or MEVing the MEV bots, etc. And did they launder the money? Not like I don't know if they were bad at it. Like okay, that's a legality thing, which I think is like less interesting. The more interesting part is what they actually did. And is it bad? Is it different from MEV in general? They are charged for manipulating and exploiting a bug in the MEV-Boost code. So when other bots try to create bundles of MEV, and they even did more than that. They created stupid transaction. Oh, I will buy ETH at like really extreme high prices. So they intentionally kind of like lured in MEV bots to sandwich them. Now, sandwich has two pieces, the front running piece and the back running piece. And that's good for the sandwiching attacker only if both execute, right? So if somebody's going to buy ETH at a really high price and willing to accept changes in price, the first thing you do is buy ETH before them. And then they buy, and then you sell after them when the price goes up, so you profit. But what he did is just take advantage and unbundling these bundles. So what they managed to do, we used to think it's a single person that originally was called Sandwich the Reaper because he killed all the sandwiches, and then they disclosed another bug that they didn't take advantage and said, but you have to call us low carb the Crusader from now on.
Which is pretty funny. I think that's a nice
It is the most funny. It is the
it's pretty hilarious
in our space. So low carb the Crusader turns out to be these two, allegedly, these two brothers. And what they did was lure MEV bots to create these sandwich and try to catch these really stupid transactions. And when they got into the block, they persuaded they tricked the relay to reveal what's in the block, and then took it and unbundled it. Just took the front run leg off each bundle. So basically, it removes their own stupid transaction, keep just the front running leg, which is just like, oh, buy at a really wrong prices, and then just like, okay, but without the back running leg. So that caused all that bots who did it to basically, oh, I will buy it really stupidly priced, and once the price goes up, then these two brothers allegedly, low carb the Crusader, whoever they are, took the other side of the trade. And so that lost a lot of, I think, $25 million to the bots who were lured there. And I think that brings up really interesting questions. It was kind of like, is that different from, some normal trader who's like, oh, I'm going to go to Uniswap and I will send a transaction and I will accept slippage or whatever, and then somebody and sandwich it. Like, is that really different?
Yeah, well, I think that is really one of the core questions that a lot of people have been asking. Reading over these charges, it is three really main charges. It's this conspiracy to commit wire fraud, doing wire fraud, and then the money laundering bit, which you were talking about. And it's also important to note that you can't really be charged on money laundering unless it's clear that the money that you're trying to launder is criminal. It's money
I
from...
did not know that.
Yeah, it's money from... It's okay if you have like $100 that you earned from your company or from working and you just want to obfuscate, or you want to like divide that up into 10 different banks. It's not okay if that money is something that came from a hack, in this case it did, in that these brothers clearly knew that there was a bug in the MEV-Boost software, and they exploited that bug in order to make $25 million by exploiting these bots that had thought this is our bids, as in like the bundles that we've submitted to a block, will not be revealed. That is the expectation that they were under when they were interacting in this whole system.
So let's stop on it. So that is correct, and they did take advantage of a bug that kind of like allowed them like reveal a block, but then it wasn't accepted. That attack could be launched without the bug. You could do it if you just do a better job in sending. You'll have a race condition between the first block and the second block. So it isn't, once that bug was revealed, then all the relays were kind of like, oh, okay, what do we do? Yes, we fixed this bug, but what if somebody else does it and just try to beat, and now, that block is propagating. It got to like 30% of the network, but a different block. Now, then you'll have like what is called equivocation. But still, it turns out that you could launch this attack as not 100% successfully if you reveal, like, that caused us, the relays, to say, like, oh, well, we can't just give the block to whoever sent it. So that person, think about it. Here's a concrete example. If you are going to produce 2 consecutive blocks, which, let's say, Lido do it like once a day, then you could have that block, with a stupid transaction inside and the sandwiches and etc. And once you see it, you also send a different block. And then they equivocate. That means like, oh, none of them gets inside. But that reveals all the transactions. So if you're basically give up on the first block, okay, it's not getting accepted, just in order to see the transaction. And we are seeing it sometimes also with reorgs, right? When a block gets reorged, then the transactions are leaked, even though that they're not seen. So you could kind of like do that on purpose. And then we started to say, well, relays, once we get the signature, we give a bid to the to the proposer, he signs it, and then we send it to everybody. And we stopped sending it to that proposer. We first send it to the rest of the network, and only then do we give it to the proposer, because we're started, oh, wait, this attack could be launched. Okay, so we started to add mechanisms to prevent that. And that brings up the question. Sure, they took advantage of how the code was done, or was it a bug? Was it not a bug? How is that different from, traders expect their transactions not to be front run? If they're wrong, people could you say that people that listen, bloXroute, we listen to the entire network at the speed of light? Are we cheating? Is this a bug because it allows us to see all the information and front run others? Right? So it's kind of it's unclear to me. I care less about the legality about it and of them specifically. I care way more what it means for us as in DeFi and in crypto. And I would argue it's one and the same. So is it okay to steal from thieves, or is it legal to steal from thieves? Maybe it's okay, maybe it's illegal. But the question is MEV in general very different from it?
It's a good question to ask, but I think that there are some clear differences between the two that you're describing, of being able to try and exploit what you're basically saying, isn't MEV in its, in the idea of MEV-Boost, isn't that an exploit and an attack on Ethereum versus trying to exploit and attack the MEV bots that are sandwiching user transactions? I think number one, there is clear coordination and cooperation and support behind all of the validators. 90% of the validators that are securing the Ethereum protocol are using MEV-Boost and this protocol. So it really is an integral piece of software that is used to secure Ethereum.
But does that mean that 2 years ago was it illegal, and now we kind of if we take that and accept it, we have reached that point because okay, if you don't do it, you lose money, etc. But users don't know it.
That is a gray area in terms of the consensus around a protocol. But I think the DOJ right now is very specific in that there was an open source protocol that was very important and widely used by core integral Ethereum stakeholders that was exploited. And so what the DOJ right now is really pointing out is black hat hacking, this is not the first time that they've went after somebody for doing this, for manipulating a piece of software in the way that it wasn't intended. Mango Markets, that's another kind of big example. And I think that what's really important to highlight here is that the DOJ is pointing out or trying to charge someone for trying to defraud users.
But
you could argue,
I don't have the quote in front of me, but they're saying what did they do? They manipulated the order of transactions. You know who else manipulated? You were saying about this is a critical infrastructure use, by open sourcing. You're talking Uniswap here. Uniswap is an open source infrastructure used by everybody as part of that. And what do you know? You could pay higher fees to be the first and capture CeFi DeFi ARB and really take the money from the LPs.
But that's not something people are patching. It's not a bug in Ethereum that there is a fix for. I 100% agree that the line is very blurry, but in this case, a patch was created to immediately fix the issue. It wasn't an exploit that could have been replicated after the patch was created. And in addition to that, there was clear evidence of malintent in the Google searches that these two brothers had searched, and then the fact that they didn't return the money when they were asked, and there's the facts of the case are not looking great.
I'll take really, devil's advocate.
Please do.
I'm not sure I stand behind all of it, but. Is the fact that we were able to patch it and we weren't able to patch Uniswap, right? If I could put out a patch and say okay, we don't even need a patch, just run vanilla Ethereum and put transactions in order, blah, 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 etc., in the order that they receive, etc., and you will not have CeFi DeFi arbitrage sniping the LPs. We could, the fact that people don't run it and they run MEV-Boost is because as a collective and especially the validator decided they make more money running something else. Potentially validator decided they're better making more money being paid by whoever exploits Uniswap LPs than something else. Wait, isn't Uniswap X A patch, well, we have a problem that everybody gets, like constantly get the worst price. We patched it with UniX. Like the fact that there is a patch to fix it, I don't think defines whether something is good or do we have an easy fix for it.
It doesn't, but the consensus of the network, I think, is a really big deal. As in, like, the subjective view that Ethereum uses MEV-Boost, and this is the way that transactions and, you know, the security of Ethereum is created, and this is the way that the Ethereum ecosystem minimizes the MEV. And when you find a bug in this system, regardless of whether or not it's the protocol or the MEV-Boost software that is not even directly related to the protocol, but is widely accepted by network participants, that's when clearly the DOJ is on the side of Ethereum, the Ethereum ecosystem, and says this is a financial system that we need to protect. And with the full force of the law, if you try and hack this in a black hat manner, we will come after you.
So I agree with like 2/3 of it. I already want to jump in. Like if you come in and you manipulate transactions and their order, we're coming after you. That's what they're saying. And I'm not sure.
That's not what they're saying. They're saying the exploit of the MEV-Boost software and the two brothers making money off of that exploit.
Agree. And I'm not really defending them. It's not like they allegedly blah, blah, blah. Like they took the money from the bots. They tricked them into doing it. What my point and the thing that I care way more about is, aren't we just doing the same? We, you, I, everybody in DeFi do that to retail traders who think they're coming into the system. Their consensus is not, oh, sure, whatever, I should be careful in getting what I'm getting. Like, here's a trading platform. I will send my trading. This is how trading works, right? And so, not here, but they don't know it. Also, you said, wait, one thing that you said, you're just trying to get me fired here. We did not do MEV-Boost to minimize MEV. We did MEV-Boost to maximize MEV.
That's an opinionated take. That's a hot take.
How is that a hot take? 50%. Some people run and capture MEV, some don't, and etc. And we have some validators making higher APYs than others. He said, like, listen, we don't want people to have higher APY than others. I disagree. In retrospect, that was a mistake. But let's create a market, the most efficient market, where we bring Wintermute and SCP and all the C5, like everybody who knows how to extract the most MEV, an army of searchers who try to extract the most value, and then run an auction so the validator extract as much of value. This maximizes the amount of MEV in the network, like being extracted. If half of the people didn't participate, then there will be less MEV because they didn't try to extract it. We just made it the most professional, optimized to extract MEV. I don't see in which way. Tell me, in which way does it reduce MEV at all? You could say it's worth it. It's worth it to do it because we want an equal APY for everyone. That was the thinking 2.5 years ago. That like it's worth it to do it because otherwise stake will flow to the highest APY, and so we don't want that. We don't want centralization to the best MEV extractors. We want decentralization of validators, so we'll allow even a solo validator to extract the most MEV. But let's be clear, we're maximizing MEV, but now we're maximizing it for everybody. So we level the playing, but we maximize MEV.
The reason why I don't think of it as maximizing MEV is because that amount of MEV exists whether or not people have efficient means to extract it. As in, like, that MEV, somebody is going to take it. Somebody is going to have the resources and the capital to be able to take advantage of users' trades. There's a certain way in which you might go about taking that MEV, which is maybe the validator takes it and the validator vertically integrates, and there's a certain amount of time that they need for these dynamics to be met. And then eventually all of that MEV is taken. But the amount of MEV in the system, it stays the same. Or like it increases, I guess, with DeFi volume and trade volume and whatever and user transactions. But the tools in which we have in order to move that MEV around, who gets it, how, in what ways, and in what shapes and forms, that can change. And I think that, I don't know. I don't know if I don't know if there's a clear path forward yet for minimizing MEV. And I think that's also another big question that's been coming out of this. Yeah.
So really, I don't like even the term MEV at this point because, MEV, what is MEV and what's fun? I have an issue with front running and sandwiching. That hurts the users. There's also atomic arbitrage, which is a good thing. I don't care which venue you're trading on, you should get the correct price. And if there's some prices wrong, then somebody would come and correct it, and that's a good thing. And there's CeFi DeFi arbitrage. So price moves on CeFi, we want DeFi to move with it, etc. So these aren't bad, but front running and sandwiching is clearly are bad for the user because you get the worst execution. I disagree with you. There's there's an equal amount of MEV because it depends on how we design our system. On Polygon, Fastlane run like an MEV auction kind of thing, but everything is in the open. If everything is in the open, there's literally no sandwich attack there because it's too risky. If somebody sends a trade, what happened could be exactly what Low Carb the Crusader did. Right? If somebody tried to create a bundle of sandwiches in the open, they see the transaction and their front-running transaction will be itself get sandwiched. So you have back runs, you have front runs, but you don't have sandwiches, which are way worse, right? Front run is just somebody's about to buy something, I will buy before he buys.
Wait, are you just talking about a public mempool here, Uri? Where transactions?
So Alex from Fastlane could come to the show and explain in detail, etc. But the idea is, the idea is yes, that you send the bundles in the open so everybody could see these transactions. It goes through the auction mechanisms. Others see the other bundles, and so if I see an opportunity and I pay $100, you could see the same opportunity, try to pay 101. It makes even more competitive the auction. But the key here is that there are literally no sandwich attack, which are the worst, right? The first leg of the sandwich actually trades in the wrong direction. You try to make the original, the target transaction, it gets the worst execution. So if somebody is about to buy ETH, you trade in the wrong direction, then you kind of capture it on the other side. And so I don't agree that the amount of MEV is necessarily equal, but you could say, well, in theory, but I care less about that. I care more about practical front running and sandwiching. And I don't
there are
Brett Miller from Flashbot, right? He's repeat after me,
Robert.
Right? What was the Flashbot slogan, right? We minimize the MEV that we can,
yes, and
we decentralize the MEV that we can't.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't do that at all. We did not minimize any MEV. We maximized MEV, so all validators will have the same APY. And that was okay, because we said it's important because we intentionally chose to do it. It wasn't wow, we don't know what we're doing. Let's see what happens. We chose to maximize MEV and make it the most predatory, which is why I don't see a giant difference between what's happening in the mempool and between what Low Carb did, etc. But we did it because the thinking was that if we don't, all the stake would flow to whoever is really good at extracting MEV and will centralize the validator landscape. And then now and this was before the merge and before the move to POS. And now with that we have insight, we say, MEV is way smaller than everybody anticipated. Okay, APY is 4% vanilla if you don't do anything, and 4.4 if you run MEV bot. So it's the difference between 4% APY and 4.4% APY. It's not this giant amount that will change everything. So that's piece number one.
It could be for now too, because DeFi activity is quite low.
Why do you think DeFi activity is quite low? Maybe because it sucks so badly because you always get the worst execution price. Maybe.
There might be many reasons why Ethereum fees right now. And Ethereum is having quite a bit of time. I think regulatory reasons is another clear reason why Ethereum right now is not doing great. And there's many reasons for that. However, you putting this all on MEV and MEV-Boost, I think is a little disingenuous here. But
you're right. You're right on that one. I agree with that one. But what I wanted to say is the consensus reward is way bigger, and there are more important centralization vectors, right? So we have LSTs, right? The biggest one, Lido, right? It's LSTs became a thing, and they affect centralization way more than MEV. Then we have branding, right? We have Coinbase. publicly traded company, and they have 14% of all the stake. Because if you want to stake with somebody, do you stake it with Coinbase, which has a brand name for like, let's say 4.2% APY, or with somebody else who has like 4.4? If you're big and you have a lot of money, brand name matter. Like, it's a public, I trust Coinbase and their infrastructure a lot more than some random dude out there, even if it has slightly higher APY. So my point is to say, we kind of glazed over. Other things don't matter. The only thing that stake would flow to the highest APY, and we see that it doesn't. Okay, there's a difference between the median and the average APY, but like, people keep their stake wherever that is, mostly speaking. And so we injected all the MEV infrastructure to solve for this. We don't want all the stake to flow to the best MEV extractor. And it isn't clear that this was the right decision in retrospect.
I think stake has still flowed to the actor that has the potential to make the highest amount of yield. Like, Lido is by far the largest staking pool in the Ethereum ecosystem, and stake will continue to flow because of its economies of scale. And while Lido will not, engage in very malicious activities using its, very close to 1/3 of stake, we hope, because they are Ethereum lined, whatever the heck that means. The idea that they could, and the idea that there's a lot of, like security in numbers, since it is the largest staking pool, what are the chances that if I add more, there's security in the fact that it's large. So if everyone's stake goes down, and then my stake is down.
With you. They charge 10% of the, like, if you have LSTs, Lido charge 10% of the yield. That's what like Lido gets out of it. So this is the best example of like people taking their stake and putting it not at where the highest yield is, but at Lido, because it's more useful. So I'm not saying even if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm saying we built our MEV infrastructure to optimize to maximize MEV for everybody, because we were so afraid for validators having different APY, because we thought everything will go to the highest APY. We're seeing this is not the case. Lido is a great example. They take 10%, so you're by definition not making the highest yield because you're getting something else.
I think the primary thing is that MEV is not really a factor in people's decisions about which staking pools they go into. Who knows if MEV was a factor, the different dynamics that we'd see, the different centralization that would have happened in the validator set. But the fact is, the reality is right now, MEV has been outsourced to builders. And that is where we're seeing the centralization happen, because that's what we expected to happen. We said we didn't want the validator set to be centralized, so let's move it to the builders. And guess what we're seeing? That MEV that we outsourced and moved is, in fact, centralizing the builders. We also
said that relays would exist and we'll replace them within 12 months. So, like, it is a centralized developers, as somebody who runs two of the relays, yes, this will be like a temporary thing, and that had been in September. So, okay, like a year, less than 2 years, like a year and a half ago. We're nowhere close. It isn't clear at this point. Some think we should, and something like this. It's called the bypassability, right? People say, like, even if we do something in protocol, people would still use them because it pays better. And so, yes, like we created all sorts of stuff in order to solve this. But you started by saying, like, we minimize MEV. We do not minimize MEV in anything that we do.
We're trying. That is the point of this whole exercise, of why we build these builders, why we have relays, why developers. It's trying to minimize the types of MEV that are clearly negative. And I agree. I think that to some extent, there are tools in which you could say, this is bad MEV. We don't want this type of MEV to happen. Sandwiching, for example. And arbitrage is okay. But it's hard. I think there's still quite a lot of disagreement among Ethereum core developers about what is the path forward in order to really achieve that vision. And maybe as we move around to the final couple of questions that I have for you, Uri, even though we
will not have time for everything. I did.
Yeah, but we're gonna try. All right. This. I like to keep these episodes short. Is what are some of those solutions that that the community is starting to create consensus around? Because clearly, like we've established in the beginning of this show, the consensus and the number of people opting into a system is a clear determinant of whether or not, that thing is considered, hacking that thing or like participating in that process is like criminal or not. So I do really think that like finding consensus around what MEV is acceptable and what is not, and building systems for that, resilient systems for that, is really important. We have MEV-Boost now, whether or not you believe in it, but there
whether you like it or not.
Whether you like it or not, that is the reality of what is happening on Ethereum. And there are many proposals, EPBS, issuance changes, inclusion lists. There's so many different research topics right now, figuring out what are we going to do next. And this DOJ charges, I think, really reignites this whole conversation. So I'm curious to know, what are the future-looking initiatives and research that you think is most promising for minimizing MEV?
So I'll hold myself from pitching what I think we should be doing, like, and all this stuff. I will point out a few things. One is, I want us to imagine what happened if we just scrape the entire thing. The null thesis, okay? Are we better off, or like, is it better or worse? Tomorrow, all the client teams and all the core devs can say, like, we remove the builder API, that piece that allows the MEV-Boost to speak with the client. We remove it in the next hard fork, so you could still include it. It would be slightly harder. Anybody could fork it. Anybody could recreate it, no problem. But vanilla clients will not have it. In that imaginary world, I ask myself, does Coinbase, as an example, okay, starting with them as the largest single validator, do they take $10 billion of their customers' funds, okay, and run it on a modified client? They don't use vanilla. Now they're trying, here's somebody who modified it, whether that's Flashbot, whether themselves, whether somebody else, in order to increase APY from 4 to 4.4%. And that's not even clear. It probably would be like between 4.1 because they will MEV will creep in elsewhere. Or do they run vanilla? Like, would they risk all their customer funds in order to increase the APY by a bit? 0.4% APY? Now, Coinbase, their margin, all validated for that matter, their margin of profit is something like 5% of the yield. That's kind of like industry standard. So for them, it's not the difference between 4 and 4.4. It's 5% of that difference. So do they run vanilla in that world, or do they use modified code? I think it's obvious that the publicly traded company doesn't take $10 billion off their customers' fund, risking their entire, I think it's very unlikely they'll run something modified themselves, not coming from the core teams.
Do they do that already? In that, if 90% of the network is earning a slightly higher yield,
but not because they're doing it because we all said it's okay.
Because everybody else is doing it. So why wouldn't they?
But that's what I'm saying. Let's say the null hypothesis, core devs remove builder API. Okay, at that point, vanilla doesn't run it. Do they run vanilla? And then let's say a Tessent or one of our BlockDemon or Figment, any of the other validators, big Bitcoin Swiss, let's say the others run modified code. Do you think Coinbase will take, again, $10 billion of customer funds? Would they run it on modified code and not the vanilla Ethereum client to increase APY from 4 to 4.4%?
In that theoretical situation, I don't think that there is a software to run, and MEV still exists. There's still profit to be made, and certain validators, certain staking pools will take advantage of the fact that additional money can be made.
Agreed. Why is that a bad thing? Why do we inject builders and relays and searchers to maximize MEV everywhere? Instead of saying, we don't maximize it, and some validators capture more than the others, and users don't get sandwiched.
And those validators are the validators that continue to grow larger and larger and outcompete every other validator.
That is just not true. if it was like, these guys make 2%, that guy and people make 4%, twice as much, the difference would be significant. It isn't as significant compared to LSTs and brand name. Coinbase get traction and like get more stake because of safety numbers, as you said. I will stake with whoever. I have stake in Lido. Why? I don't know. Everybody else do that. I'll do that as well, right? It's kind of like, I don't know what's it. It's not that all of a sudden this is like changes then in 100 years, then the difference, we can calculate what's the difference on the 10-year horizon between making 4 versus, let's do it right now. How much is
No. It's fine. We don't have to go through that thought experience right exactly now. But I will have to time box this discussion, Uri.
Sure. No, I will say that because I think it kind of like seals that thing. If you made 4% over 10 years, then without capturing any MEV, you'll make 48%, and with MEV, you'll be making 52% or 53%. It's not a big difference between the two. MEV isn't as big as people say. In the reality we have seen in the past 2 years through 2 cycles. What
about building resilient systems for global adoption?
Let's do that. You know what's not resilient? Using like centralized builders and centralized relays. We're injecting fragility. You know what's resilient? The mempool is resilient, and each validator building their own block wherever they are located. That is exactly
not if the mempool is being spammed with transactions run by searchers.
We're actually okay with transactions spammed by searchers. The only thing it's still resilient. We had no problem of spam. Like basically you send the highest transaction, the lowest one or get dropped, etc. It is extremely expensive. Like that's not why we did MEV-Boost. Like resiliency is vanilla Ethereum. Okay, that's why we said we'll remove the relays within 12 months because we understood that adds fragility, right? I agree with you completely. I am one of the giant DeFi bulls out there. Like the reason I wake up in the morning, I'm so excited. I want DeFi to compete with CeFi. But to do that, it needs to be not this Arb battle, hunting ground, which is basically what DeFi becomes too. It's actually a negative sum game where like you get the worst execution.
All right. Well,
that was me. You got me heated up. I'm sorry.
I know, but I like that because that's what I knew was going to happen. And I always appreciate the pushback, Uri. I always appreciate you, being just so open and honest about like what you're viewing in the space and some of the theoreticals of what happens if we scrap the entire system. What happens if there is no MEV-Boost? I think those are useful mental exercises.
I appreciate that.
I appreciate the spicy takes. As always, I appreciate the debate, and thank you so much, everybody who is listening to this week's episode of Infinite Jungle. It is a little bit longer than our usual ones, but that's because there's really only one to listen to this week. We hope that you will join us again next week, and we hope that you learned something new about the Ethereum ecosystem. I hope you learned something new that you will take away, and until next time, stay safe out there, everyone.